Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. Welcome to this session of our Islam Study Circle. There seems to be some connection problem with our webinar software, but we will continue our class on or our session on this Facebook Live. The Quranic verse that we are going to study today is related to the welfare of the orphans, and it occurs in Surah Nisa, and it is verse 10 of Surah Nisa. So the words of this Quranic verse are: Innal lazina ya'kuluna amwal al-yatama zulman innama ya'kuluna fi butunihim nara wa yasayaslawna sa'ira. Indeed, those who unjustly devour the wealth of orphans swallow nothing but fire into their bellies, and soon they shall be cast into the fire. So, as you can see, this verse actually cautions and prods us and tells us that the wealth of the orphans is something that we must always be very, very careful about. And usurpation or actually embezzling this wealth is an extreme activity that any person can do. Less than that, however, a person has to look after these orphans. And we know that the Quran has very specifically given instructions regarding how we should actually care for the orphans. And we know that by speaking of the orphans, the Quran has actually pointed to a category of people. And this category of people, dear viewers, relates to people who are weak and meek in the society. They are the ones who are the rejected lot, or the ones who are at the lowest strata of a society. And actually, in the times of the Prophet particularly, we know that an orphan was someone who was really needed to be taken care of, because people would generally leave such orphans to the mercy of other tribes, and at times they would not take care of these orphans the way they should have. So the Quran has specifically, at a couple of places, has pointed out this fact that those who actually usurp the wealth of orphans are doing a great disservice to them, and let alone disservice, they are actually eating fire. And on the day of judgment, it means that they will end up in hellfire. In this world, they are swallowing fire, and on the day of judgment, they'll end up in hellfire, signifying the fact that it is a very major sin. Because an orphan who has been given in our custody, an orphan who for whom we are his guardian, is a person who has been entrusted to us. And hence, it is all the more reason, it is all the more essential that he be looked after with care and generosity. And it would be outright injustice, outright unfairness if his wealth is usurped. Of course, his wealth can be used for his or her own welfare, but no person has this authority to misuse the wealth he has been entrusted, even when he is trying to rear and care for these orphans. So the important thing that further needs to be understood is that the Quran does not end here. It says, وَسَيَصْلَوْنَ سَعِيرًا. The evil that they are doing here, the evil that they are amassing here by usurping the wealth of the orphans, is not just going to be something of a bad omen for them in this world. It will augur very bad for them in the next world, and they will be consumed by the fire of hell. So, as I said, primarily here we need to understand that the Quran is actually pointing out towards the weaker sections of the society. It wants to tell us that we have to take care of them. And there is no question about the fact that we think that if there is something of a right they have on us, then it is that we have to be very polite with them. And as I said, this is basically a subheading or a heading in which all the weaker sections of society are included. For example, widows, the indigent, the poor, all of them are included. And because of the fact that all these poor sections of the society need care, they need affection, that it is highlighted here that we have to be very, very concerned about them. And we often talk about this, dear viewers, that we have to care for others as much as we can. Living a life for others is a life worthwhile. We often think of our own selves, we often think of our own future, we often think of our own family, but thinking about others, especially those who are in stress, especially those who are in duress, is also our responsibility. You see, when the Almighty has given us wealth and He has given us affluence, He is actually trying to engage us. He's actually trying to test us if we spend in His cause, for His cause, if we are able to care for the downtrodden. Because we have to remember that life as a whole is a trust to us, and we have to expend this trust in a manner which is beneficent, in a manner which is actually magnanimous, in a manner in which our generosity is expressed for others, caring for others, being sympathetic to others, having a very, very discerning eye for the problems of others is actually what is required for a believer. And we often talk about the fact that when this happens, we have to understand that this life is basically a place of trial and test. So there are some people who are given affluence, and hence they are tested through this affluence. And then there are other people who are deprived of a lot of things in life, and they are tested on this as well. So for the poor, it is a test of patience, and for the rich, it is a test of their gratitude. So we have to realize that this world primarily is a place of trial and test for all of us. And the way this trial and test actually occurs is that all of us are made to pass through certain circumstances, good or bad. In these circumstances, the Almighty checks us and tests us how we behave. And this is one area in which this behavior is tested, that how we behave to people who are downtrodden, how we behave towards people who need to be cared. The rich, of course, have this duty to care. They must look after old people. They must look after people who are in some sort of bother, because as far as this responsibility is concerned, of course, for a very welfare state, this is the responsibility of a state to take care of them. But in the absence of any such welfare facility or availability, it becomes the collective responsibility of the society to take care of these people. They have to realize that this is what they have been asked for. They can say for themselves, for their needs, their present needs and their future needs, but after that, whatever is left over for them, with them, belongs to society, belongs to the people who are around them. And we have to reach out to these people. We should not wait for these people to reach out to us, because we know that the white collar people, it is very difficult for them to ask. And instead of they reaching out and asking, we have to go forward and we have to locate them, and we have to actually find these people. And I'm sure that if we look very deeply, they are not very hard to find. We have to tune ourselves. I always say that we have to tune our antennas to this misery that is around us. It's only a question of opening our eyes and looking towards people. And we have to be very, very careful that at times a person looks very well set. He looks apparently to be a person who is wearing good clothes, but at times, if you look more deeply, you will find out that he or she is a person who is actually just displaying this decency that he has or she has, whereas at times he or she might not have enough money to pay the bills, enough money to pay the fees of their children, or some of the other very essential items of our life. So we have to be those in charge. We have to take charge of the situation and realize that the Almighty has given us this responsibility of thinking for others, of caring for others. Whereas now we go on to the next part of our study circle, which is the Hadith of the day. And this Hadith of the day actually has been taken from the Sahih of Imam Bukhari, Al-Jami al-Sahih. I'll just read out the Hadith before you, and then I'll just translate it, and then we'll discuss it. So the words are, An Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu qala qala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, unsur akhaka zaliman aw mazluma. فقال رجل يا رسول الله أنصره إذا كان مظلوما أفرأيت إذا كان ظالما كيف أنصره قال تحجزه أو تمنعه من الظلم فإن ذلك نصره. Anas bin Malik stated that God's messenger said, help your brother whether he is the oppressor or the oppressed. A person thereupon said, I can help him if he is oppressed, but please tell me how can I help him if he is the oppressor? The Messenger of God replied, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, stop him from oppression. This is how you can help him. So it actually, these points towards our collective responsibility, and in a very subtle way, in a very, very eloquent way, the Prophet has directed our attention that we have to help a person, whether he is the oppressor or whether he is the oppressed. Of course, helping the oppressed is something that we all can easily understand, that there's some injustice to him or her, and we are trying to help him out. But what about the fact that if he is the oppressor or she is the oppressor, and this precisely was the question that arose in the mind of the person who is mentioned here, and he says that you can help your brother who is the oppressor, who is doing injustice, by stopping him from this injustice. And viewers, we have to realize that stopping a person from injustice is something that has many stages. And of course, the primary stage of this is that we have to become friends with such a person. We have to come closer to such a person instead of shunning him, because people who are unjust, people who are oppressive, they need to be befriended, so that through our friendship, through our own influence, we can stop such people from inflicting harm on other people. So the best way to stop a person from doing harm or from inflicting harm to other people is to come close to him, is to make him realize the fact that what a great disservice he is doing to humanity, that his harshness, that his unkindness is something which is really taking its toll, and he or she should realize it. So all of us as human beings should be very concerned when a person is going out of bounds and he is trampling upon other people. We have to find out the reason. At times, a person is someone who is a chronic evil person, and we are not able to set him right ourselves. And in these extreme circumstances, at times we have to report his case as well to the authorities. But less than that, there is a lot of room that we can actually try ourselves. We can try to befriend that person. We can try to influence that person. I know it's a hard job. It's a very difficult job. We have to kill our ego for that, because to come close to a person who is harmful for others, of course, requires a lot of courage. It also requires taking some amount of risk. But then the cost, of course, could be great, but we have to realize that the benefit accrued could be tremendous. That if we are able to mend a person, if we are able to reform a person, what great an effect this would be on a society. Look at the person. On one instance, he is inflicting a lot of problems for others. On the other instance, he has suddenly changed, and instead of bringing worries and miseries in the lives of people, he is now instrumental in bringing a lot of comfort in their lives. So we can see, we have to realize this, that this takes some effort. This takes some amount of concentration, some amount of strategy, a lot of skill to reform a person from his excessive tendencies. But I assure you, if we learn this art, if we learn this skill, it can go a long way in actually setting right a lot of problems and a lot of wrongs in our own society. We have to realize that no one is going to set our house in order. It is ourselves who have to come forward and set right the problems that we are facing. And the Messenger of God has very rightly said that if we are to become a better people, if we have to become a society in which injustice must not prevail, then we must stop the person who is doing this injustice. And of course, stopping someone by force is not our authority. This is the authority of the state. But as far as we are concerned, we can always be good friends, we can always be good advisors, we can always pick and choose methods which can move a person. And remember what Prophet Jesus has said, and I often quote what he has said in this regard when people asked him that why are you going towards sinners and you're not going towards the righteous people? And his reply was that I have been sent to evil people and have not been sent to the righteous people, because they are already reformed and rectified. So taking cue from this attitude of Jesus, I think all of us need, and from this, of course, hadith of the Prophet Muhammad as well, that we have to play our part in the society that we are living. We have to contribute in the society that we are living. And when a society becomes disregardful of the harms that someone is committing, then such a society is bound to doom. A society which is bound to prevail is the society in which people stop others from doing wrong. They put them to shame. They make them realize, and the person who is doing wrong, he really feels ashamed that he would not be able to face humanity when he does something wrong. Unfortunately, today, people do wrong and they proudly announce and proudly proclaim the wrong that they are doing. This is actually an alarming situation, because it only means that the silent majority is not doing his or her its work. The silent majority is silent. The silent majority must wake up. It has to wake up to the call of the day, and that is play its role. And it has to remember that it's only the first initiative that at times becomes the first drop in the ocean, and then several other drops start to accumulate, and we find a whole torrent gushing forth and setting things right. Because now we go on to the next part of our study circle, and this is the Bible verse of the day. So it's this Bible verse is taken from the Gospel of St. Luke. It's chapter 12, verses 22 to 26, and he, which of course refers to Jesus, said to his disciples, "For this reason I say to you, take no thought of your life about what food you will take, or for your body, how it may be clothed. Is not life more than food, and the body than its clothing? Give thought to the ravens. They do not put seeds into the earth, or get together grain, and they have no storehouses or buildings, and God gives them their food. Of how much greater value are you than the birds? And which of you by taking thought is able to make himself any taller? If then you are not able to do even that which is least, why are you troubled about the rest?" So the prophet Jesus here is making this all-important point that life is not mere food. It's not mere fulfillment of our carnal needs, like clothing ourselves, like sheltering ourselves. Of course, these are all important things, but life is much more to that. Life has a reason beyond that, and that is that we have to have that spiritual connection with the Almighty. We have to have that God connection. So merely fulfilling our physical needs is fulfilling one part of our existence. We also have another part of our existence, and that is our spiritual existence. If in our spiritual existence we are lacking, we'll find that our soul has grown weak, and we often succumb to evil. And in the battle of good and evil, in the conflict of good and evil, the evil in us often prevails on our goodness. And this is where we have to realize that life is not mere food. It's not mere physical needs that we have. It's more than that. We have to fulfill our spiritual needs. You see, we have to realize that human beings exist on two planes. One of them is the physical plane, in which we have physical needs. We feel hungry. We have the craving for sex. We feel thirsty. We have other instincts. We have emotions. Similarly, we have a soul as well. This is the second or the parallel plane of existence, and that parallel plane needs to be nourished as well. And we have to realize that if we do not nourish our spiritual being, our spiritual existence, our soul might be living, but its real force will be gone. As I said, it will often succumb to evil actions and evil thoughts, and it will often think that it has gone too far in doing evil things. So we have to have that God connection. We have to have that spirituality in us, which makes us stronger, which makes us faster, which makes us realize that we have to face life head on. We have to face life and take life as a challenge. A challenge can only be taken as a challenge when we have the guts to face it, and we turn problems into our own advantage. Although this might seem a big claim, but I honestly can tell you that we can turn our problems into our own advantage by trying to live with them, by accepting them that they are certain problems, and then trying to face them and stare them in the eye and make it a point that we will not be bogged down by problems. We will remain positive in our lives. We will always count our blessings. We will always look forward to what we have and thank God for what we have, and we will actually ignore what we do not have. We will take life as a test. We will take life as an arena in which we are made to constantly struggle between good and evil. And our real test is this battle between good and evil. Our real test is to live a life which is in line with our own conscience. Our real test is to live a life which actually is a life in which we uphold the truth, come what may. We never compromise on the truth. We are always honest. We are selfless. We are grateful. we are compassionate, we are kind, we respect the laws of the country that we live in, we respect elderly people, we respect our parents, we respect even those people who are younger to us. So we have to realize that unless and until our moral being is satisfied, our moral being fulfills the rights which are imposed on it, we will be severely lacking in our own lives. So with these words, viewers, we come to an end to this third section as well. And I'd like to, when we commence the fourth part, point out a misconception in this fourth section regarding certain Islamic things. And the topic that I'm going to briefly touch upon today is something which has arisen in a lot of Western countries and even in Muslim countries, but primarily in non-Muslim countries, and that is the issue of cemeteries. Often it is thought that Muslims cannot be buried in the cemeteries or graveyards of non-Muslims and vice versa. Well, to be honest, there is no such ruling in the Sharia which makes any such distinction. Burial is something which is totally it's dependent on the administration of a city. If they have joint graveyards, there is absolutely no harm in having joint graveyards. If there is a distinction so that people of different religions have different graveyards, that's also equally possible. And if there is some intermingling, as I said, that too is possible. So the bottom line is that intermingling of graves of Muslims and non-Muslims is not a problem. It's non-issue. It's a non-issue. It's not a problem at all. People can be buried wherever they are, and they can be buried with a non-Muslim, and they can be buried with Muslims. In fact, they have to realize that we are human beings first, and then Muslims or non-Muslims. Humanity always comes first. And in this regard, when we die, and of course we are going to be presented to the Almighty one day, we die as human beings. And as human beings, we must not make any distinction that where we are buried and who buries us, as long as we are buried. And as I said, is absolutely not an issue if Muslims are buried in graveyards which belong to non-Muslims or in which non-Muslims are buried, and vice versa. So this is the misconception that I wanted to touch upon and briefly chat about. And viewers, with these few words, I come to an end to this study circle. It's again cut short because of the fact that some of our softwares are not working, and the online software program through which this program is broadcast is having some issues, because of which we have to now curtail our session. And I now beg leave, and inshallah we'll see each other next Saturday, same time. Until then, it's Khuda Hafiz.